Okay, so we're going to look at control reversal today, or as I've put up here, why can't I bank anymore? And this is the phenomena whereby at a certain speed, the lateral control of the aircraft is completely lost. We're going to talk about this today. It's clearly something very important to understand about aircraft flight. It's a static aeroelastic phenomena, and we're going to talk about the theory behind it today and the physical mechanism, and then we're going to talk about a mathematical model for control reversal in the next lecture. Okay, so control reversal is a phenomena that may be present on any control surface, but is mainly exhibited on ailerons due to having long, flexible wings. And we'll understand why it's more likely to occur on an aileron, for example, rather than elevator or rudder. But it can still occur on those control surfaces. Okay, so you've hopefully all seen the video, or you were pretty familiar with how aircraft control surfaces work anyway, but let's just remind ourselves what an aileron is supposed to do. They're there for roll control, but we are trying to adjust the amount of lift produced in the two-dimensional section. We're going to look at this two-dimensional model. Okay, so remember, ailerons, aft sections of the wing that we can hinge upwards or downwards to affect a lift increment. So we're going to talk about how the ailerons are supposed to work as this ideal or rigid case. So I'm going to draw a two-dimensional section. If I can remember how to draw an aerofoil, that would be good. That's good enough for now. Okay, so I've got my two-dimensional section and I've got my aileron, which is this section that I can move up and down here. So let's say that's my delta A. So I'm going to draw on in red the things that it's supposed to do. Okay, aileron deflection changes the camber, changes the pressure distribution, and we get this plus delta L. That's what's supposed to happen. And this is how ailerons work. They obviously work, or we wouldn't be able to use them on fixed wing aircraft. But because of the flexibility of the wing, we need to have the secondary effect. But everything in red on here is going to be how ailerons are supposed to work. I'm going to call that delta L is the change in lift. So that's how it's supposed to work. There is also the secondary effect that we have to take into account when we have a flexible aircraft, which all aircraft are flexible. In addition to changing just the lift on this section, we're going to change the drag of this section. We're going to have a lot of viscous drag because of this dirty great thing we've just immersed into the flow. We're also going to change the pressure distribution totally around the aerofoil. Both of these things in turn change the moment that is affected around about the aerodynamic center. So we have increased drag and change to the pressure distribution. And because of that, that causes a change to the pitching moment, which is going to be nose down. So it affects a change to the pitching moment. So if the if the aileron is deflected down, it will cause a nose down pitching moment. Okay, so that's going to cause a nose down pitching moment if the elevator is deflected downwards, and it will cause a nose up pitching moment if the elevator is deflected upwards. And hopefully you guys can see what the problem is going to be here. If we have a pitching moment that's going nose down, wings are not rigid. That will cause the whole wing to change its incidence downwards. So how am I going to draw this on here? Let's draw this in yellow. So that's going to cause the whole aerofoil to twist downwards. And you can probably appreciate at this stage why that is more prevalent on wings than it would be on the rudder or the horizontal tail plane. It's because wings are long, and we're looking at something that's occurring at the very end of the aircraft, or the very end of the wing rather. So ailerons are placed at the ends of the wing because they enable us to have a very large large rolling moment produced with quite a small aileron deflection. But it's very easy to actually deform the wing because it's so long and slender. So that means that this effect is going to be relatively large, and we can hopefully appreciate that with this change in nose down twist attitude, we're going to have a reduction in lift. Okay, so let's just talk about what we've gone through. The ideal operation of the aileron is that it goes down, changes the lift of the whole section, and increases the lift. At the same time, it also causes a nose down pitching moment, which deforms the whole section nose down, which reduces the lift. So we've got these two things that are clearly contrasting effects. Let's pick a colour I haven't used. So how do ailerons actually work then? We obviously know that they do work, but if the aileron sort of does one thing and then undoes it as well, then how do they actually work? Well, the reason how ailerons can actually work is that the wing stiffness is independent of the flight speed, and in general, this one here is going to be proportional to the flight speed squared. This one here is going to be constant, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so in general, the primary or the rigid effect of the ailerons will be independent of the flight speed u in terms of the lift coefficient that we've increased. So we'll say this rigid DCL on D delta A will in general be constant, and for our purposes we're going to assume that this is constant. The other effect, where we have this nose down pitching moment, that's going to be a function of the flight speed squared, because that's going to be a function of the pitching moment, which is going to be a function of the dynamic pressure, so it's going to be a function of the flight speed squared. The wing is always going to have the same stiffness, the same torsional stiffness, so as we increase in speed, we're going to increase the amount that the wing twists down because of this control reversal. Thus, that reduction in lift due to elevated down deflection will increase with flight speed. Okay, so the secondary effect, this nose down twist, will be a function of the flight speed squared. Okay, it's a function of dynamic pressure. So as long as this effect is bigger than this one, then we have an aileron that does what it's supposed to do. If these two things are the same size, then we have an aileron that doesn't do anything. Okay, that's what we call the control reversal speed. And then if this one is bigger than this one, then the ailerons have the opposite effect. So if for an aircraft beyond a certain speed, if I was to move my stick to the right, that would cause me to roll to the left, and that would be very, very confusing. Okay, so it should hopefully be clear that as the flight speed increases, the wing torsion is going to increase and the aileron effectiveness decreases. And this is going to happen up to a certain speed, which we call the critical aileron reversal speed. Okay, and at that point there is no control. There is no ability to affect a roll rate on the aircraft at that speed. And then beyond that speed, the controls are reversed. Okay, and that's why we call it control reversal. Okay, so beyond that speed, controls are reversed. So how do we get around this? Well, it's not really a dangerous phenomena on an aircraft, but it can cause the loss of control on the aircraft. Okay, so let's talk about how we actually get around this on aircraft. So some aircraft have spoilers instead for roll control. I will leave it to you guys to comment on this and tell me if you can find an aircraft that has spoilers for roll control. But instead of having an aileron, let's say we've got, it's just a section of the wing that actually goes up and we have this spoiled flow effectively. So if we have a regular, what would be a regular flow around the wing, we then have separation occurring, stalled region just behind the spoiler. Okay, this will cause a reduction in lift. This region of separated flow causes a reduction in lift. Okay. We also can have certain aircraft that have some inboard ailerons for high-speed roll control. Okay, and just to give an example, so the Bell X5, it developed control reversals on its wings that caused some really dangerous spins. Now that occurred because it had swept wings, and we spoke about how sweeping the swept wings is good for increasing the divergence speed, but for a swept wing we actually then also increase this effect of control reversal. So aft sweep is good to increase divergence, but it's not good for control reversal. Let's talk about why. So let's just remind ourselves what we did for here. This was back looking at divergence. We showed that effectively when we have aft sweep, okay, which is lambda, as long as this is a positive number, then any bending in the wing causes a reduction in the angle of attack. So this helped us for divergence because it meant that there was this negative coupling between wing bending and wing twisting. So this was useful for divergence. It's going to cause the opposite effect for, well, it's not the opposite effect, it's going to give us the opposite outcome for control reversal. Okay, so give us a higher, so we saw that for torsional divergence, aft sweep leads to a negative coupling between bending and twisting, which gives us a higher divergence speed. And that's useful and that's good for an aircraft. But we can probably appreciate now that the same thing is not going to help us for control reversal. So let's go back to that equation over here. We see here that if we've got any twist in the wing, then that's going to change the angle of attack, or the effective, or the elastic change to the angle of attack because of torsional twist. We would also see here if we have any bending, this is going to reduce the angle of attack. So here bending is going to reduce the angle of attack. So let's think about the mechanism via which that occurs. Let's draw. Let's think about how I'm going to draw this now. So I'm looking at the starboard wing of my aircraft. It's swept through angle lambda. I've got my aileron. If I spell aileron correctly, that would be useful. So now if I want to increase a positive increase in lift, then that's going to, we'll have this same effect that we saw for an unswept wing. We're going to have this reduction in incidence due to torsional twist, but also if we're increasing this lift, we're also going to increase the bending of the wing. And if we're increasing the bending of the wing, we're going to reduce the angle of attack because of this equation that we came up with here. That's going to then further reduce the lift due to this bend twist coupling. I'm not even going to bother writing about that because hopefully you guys can see and intuit that from what we have gone through and what we've gone there. Basically, a swept back wing is reduced, the control reversal speed is reduced because of this positive sweep back. Okay, so there are a few other related phenomena. There's transonic tuck under and transonic elevator reversal. Some great films, one called The Sound Barrier, in which they have this elevator reversal. Related phenomena, we're not going to talk about them in this course, but we can probably intuit how those phenomena occur as well. So we've gone through what control reversal is and physically why it happens, and I deliberately didn't put any equations in this lecture. What we're going to move on to in the next lecture is deriving a model for control reversal. We're going to come up with a definition for aileron effectiveness, and then we're going to work out how we could calculate the control reversal speed for a given aircraft. Okay, hope this has been interesting. I think this is a fascinating phenomena, and I think it's really fun to teach as well. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. I look forward to going through some of the mathematics with you and doing this proper model. Take care, guys.